welcome to the Film Yap. We're happy to be joined here for another podcast. I'm Christopher Lloyd, and I'm joined by Alec Toombs. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
It's Monday morning, so you can probably guess what we're here to talk about. Yes, the Oscars were last night, and we didn't have to stay up as late as usual to watch it between daylight savings time, and they moved the broadcast up earlier. I personally am loving the 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. start time. We were wrapped up by 10:30. I thought that was awesome. Actually, semi-awake this morning, so that's pretty cool. But interesting how it went down. It was not the Oppenheimer sweep that many, including me, were predicting. It still obviously did very, very well, but didn't. We kind of lost in a lot of those down list categories that we were expecting. It, oftentimes when there's a big sweep year, those ones like production design and things like that tend to just go along with the big winner, and it did not. So from a prediction standpoint, I didn't do as hot as I usually do, but from a winner's standpoint, I was pretty pleased. I mean, we have the usual folks that didn't get nominated in first place, the big snubbies, Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie for Barbie being the most obvious. So, leaving that part aside that they were never in the running, of those that were in running and were not expected to win but did, I was pretty stoked. I didn't think Emma Stone had a chance. Lily Gladstone had won every single preliminary award, and I thought that was honestly a real tragedy. I'm not a fan of Flowers of the Killer Moon, as people are probably aware of by now, but in particular, I didn't think hers even constituted a leading role. My biggest beef with the movie was that it took the Osage people and their own story and put them in the background, and let's have, Leo and Robert and all the white guys up front. But I thought Emma Stone gave the performance of the year, any category. I was stoked about that. And the other one that was a big, I guess, surprise that I was I literally screamed. My boys were already asleep, and I woke them up. Was Cord Jefferson winning screenplay for American Fiction. I did not think it had a chance in heck, and I was so happy about that. So that's kind of
Who did you pick in that category?
I thought Oppenheimer was going to win.
Okay. I kind of thought the Academy was going to do what they did with Ben Affleck and Argo about a decade or so ago. All the uproar over Robbie not getting nominated for director. I thought they were going to throw a lot of awards at that. I thought that might win adapted screenplay, and I honestly thought it might win production design and costume design as well. It seems like Poor Things kind of stole their momentum.
Yeah, Poor Things had a really good night. I think I don't have the list in front of me. I think it ended up winning the second most number of Oscars. And
I
for a
mean, I
while,
guess that sort of makes sense. Oppenheimer was the most nominated movie, and Poor Things was the second most nominated movie. So the, they got the nominations for a reason. People were into these movies. People in the Academy were into these movies, and they both had really good showings last night.
yeah, I was surprised. Barbie did okay. I didn't. It did pick up a few awards here and there.
I think it
Song.
was just one for original song, and for my money, they picked the wrong song. But
Yeah, I think so too. And I will say Ryan Gosling's much ballyhooed, big razzle dazzle production for I'm Just Ken was just as awesome as they had hyped it. I almost felt bad for the other songs because it was like they had like the Flamin' Hot song. They had that down to they truncated it down to like 80 seconds.
right.
Just like a girl swaying with some kids for a minute, and Billie Eilish just piano and a girl singing. That was nice. And then he gets like this big high dollar production thing. I was like, that really seemed fair. But
It
yeah.
was awesome though, and getting
It,
Slash and Eddie Van Halen's son Wolfgang out there playing with him. I thought it was sick.
Yeah, and I liked where he stepped down. He started off the song down in the audience with Margot, and then he went down again and kind of like gave the nod to Greta and Margot, like, "Hey, Ken is nobody without you two." I like that moment as well.
And he
Um,
made time to hang out with Emma Stone too. They've done 3 movies together, and apparently broke her dress in the process. So
Said that, but I'm just looking at my TV. I couldn't see anything busted apart, like seam
right.
snapped or anything. Yeah, it's funny. Her acceptance speech kind of reminded me of Jennifer Lawrence from a few years ago. Just like very genuine and in the moment, and not graceful, but still heartfelt and full of warmth. And that's why we I think like them as actresses so much, just because they bring that genuine feeling to their roles, and even in person in interviews and awards show and
It
stuff.
was hotter on Lily Gladstone's performance than you were, and I was actually pulling for her in the category since Emma's won before. But
Yeah.
Stone's performance was brilliant. I'm not trying to take away anything from her. I think it was a brave performance in a really interesting movie. So I'm not upset that she won, but I think it would have been cool to see an Indigenous person win an Academy Award for a change.
That would have been good, but I'd like to see it where a movie where an indigenous person is actually at the center of the story,
Sure.
not off to the side. But yeah, a lot of people feel very well. And I saw it was interesting, all the ads, commercials during the broadcast. A lot of them were things for other people's projects coming up. So I see she's headlining like a crime series. I think it was on Hulu or Apple or one
It's
of
a
them.
Hulu show. I think it's she and Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, who's also a really good actress and could be an interesting show.
Yeah, so good for her. If nothing else, she's got a career now. So even if though she didn't win, in a lot of ways she has come out victorious because she's going to have a career now that maybe she otherwise might not have. So if nothing else, that movie has done at least that small good thing. Um, I was surprised. Somehow in my mind, I had it stuck that Christopher Nolan had already won several Oscars.
Yeah, this
I
is his first.
don't know why I thought that. His first nomination was actually more than 20 years ago for the screenplay for Memento. And I had that, but then we had like Inception and Dunkirk, and just somehow in my mind I was like, yeah, he's a celebrated director. He's like the most A-list director there is. So he's won Oscars, and it literally was not until they were announcing the category right before during the commercial I looked that up and I was like, what's he got, like 8 nominations and he's never won? So I was like, it takes some of the sting out of Greta Gerwig not being nominated. I really thought she needed to be nominated. I certainly would have knocked out the Anatomy of a Fall director on there. Another movie that did very
I was
well.
surprised by that winning best screenplay,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, that was original screenplay or adapted. I'm forgetting now.
That would be original. Adapted was American Fiction, I believe.
Yeah, it's always interesting what they consider. Yeah, so American Fiction was the adapted, and
I did love Cord Jefferson's speech. His point where he was talking about maybe make 10, $20 million movies or 20. Sorry, I might have gotten those figures mixed up. Make more movies of a smaller budget rather than making one $200 million movie, which I think is an astute point. And I would probably be more interested in seeing those movies than whatever Star Wars, Marvel, DC thing they're going to put down the pipeline next.
yeah, I still like the big budget movies, but maybe make $100 million Marvel movie. And we
I
use
like
the
them too, but I think a lot of stories for adults have segued to TV, and we're not getting them as much in movies.
Yeah. I was very happy about All of Us Strangers doing well. It was on my top 10 list. And we were mentioning some of the other snubbies. It wasn't as big a considered a snubby because just not very many people saw it. Was All of Us Strangers, which I think you
Yeah, I
recently
just saw it. I thought it was beautiful. I'm still kind of emotionally reeling from it. It kind of tore my heart out, but
does. And it's always like that. I mean, it was a very, very small film. It did well in the festival circuit. It really didn't get much of a theatrical release. I think it literally like appeared here in Indianapolis for like a week, either in late December or early January, and that was it. One of those films that
did
just
it play multiple theaters? Do you remember? I think it maybe was just at Can Can,
it was at Can Can. I think it was at
maybe
it,
Landmark at the Fashion Mall.
yeah, it was one of those ones. And unfortunately, I think I wanted to say it came out during the week between whatever. Like we didn't. It was just a strong festival movie that just didn't make the break.
It is on
Um,
Hulu now, so it's easy for people to see, like me, who just caught up with it. So
yeah, so look at my list here now. So Poor Things ended up winning for costumes and I think also production, makeup and hairstyling, and production design.
right.
Zone of Interest won Best Sound, which I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I figured Oppenheimer was going to win that.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought it did. I mean, I'm not as high on Oppenheimer as others, but I mean, it was a beautifully crafted film, and the soundscape in that movie in particular is not just amazing; it's central to the storytelling in a way that, I mean, Zone of Interest. Obviously, the thing going on there is you're getting like the cries and the moans and the sounds of the
Right.
Auschwitz camp, echoing over the wall there into the German family's house, which yes, that was evocative, but I mean, from a technical standpoint, was that as difficult as what they were doing in Oppenheimer? I don't know.
I feel like
Uh,
I'm the only one standing for it. I think David Fincher's The Killer should have gotten a sound nod. I thought the sound mix in that movie was insanely good and did things I've never heard before in a movie.
yeah. So the acting, so typically, I always say it seems like even in a year where it seems like we're getting more and more of these years where the four acting categories seem locked up, it's usually it is that you get one surprise.
Right.
So four, and that's just exactly how it did this year. Although I was expecting Paul Giamatti, I was hoping Paul Giamatti would come over in the Best Actor category. Him or Coleman Domingo. I was kind of on both of those. I thought were the two best male performances of the year. Didn't happen. Cillian Murphy got his. Another, well-respected actor, been around, been doing lots of things for many years. So good with that. Still hoping old Paul will get his moment in the sun eventually.
I did really enjoy the way Nick Cage presented Giamatti in the category, talking about the contact lens he wore and how it made him blind in one eye. And he said, "Would any other actor do it?" And he said, "Hell yes, I would." I thought it was totally Nick Cage, and I think Giamatti was amused by it.
Yeah, some of those were pretty good. In general, the whole thing of having the past winners come out and like fawn over this year's nominees. I mean, honestly, like the Cage one was pretty good. I'm trying to remember there was one in the female cat.
Tim Robbins' snafu was pretty funny when he declared Robert De Niro the winner and Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah,
And
in
then
general,
Downey calling back to it in his acceptance speech. He's like, "Only one flub, gents. Good job." I thought that was pretty funny.
yeah, in general, I found that pretty.
Kind of self congratulatory or kind of wanky.
Just the whole thing of having that past winners come out. What's wrong with just having last year's winner come out and do
Yeah.
that? Why do we need to bring all these other people out? I didn't even notice at first because, like, when they did it for the first one for supporting actress, I thought they were bringing out last year's five nominees, and then I was like, Mary Steenburgen, she wasn't up last year.
Yeah. I'd forgotten she'd even won an Oscar. I didn't know. Was this
It was,
like in the early 80s or something?
I went, God, I want to say it was the '70s. I can't remember what movie she won it for. Um, I don't know. Let's say of the 20 of those they did, I thought three hit, and the rest were pretty sappy and silly. And in some cases, it was obviously like the person doing the fawning didn't know the
Right.
person. I mean, there was a couple in there where it was obviously like the two people actually had a relationship, and I think that worked. Um,
Right. It sounds
honestly,
like I enjoyed that gimmick more than you did. But yeah, I do think it's better when you know the people have worked together before. I thought Sam Rockwell presenting Downey was cool. Like, those guys have worked together.
Rockwell
I
did
think,
a good. He did the best of
yeah.
the 20.
And I think anybody in that room could present Ruffalo because he just seems to be so widely loved and accepted in that community. So,
Yeah. Let's see a few of the things. Another surprise was The Boy and the Heron winning animated feature. I thought Spider-Verse had that all locked up. Um, surprise. It's kind of a, I think a bit of a nod to Hayao Miyazaki, who wasn't there, although he's quite elderly. Also, a big surprise. Wes Anderson won an Oscar for short film and didn't show. And I was like, somehow I would think Wes Anderson would go out of his way to be there for that. Don't know why he wasn't there, but now we
guessing
can
a
say,
lot of these guys don't live in the United States. I think Wes Anderson may live in London these days, and
yeah,
Miyazaki, I'm sure, is probably living in Japan.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, they have plans, at least for Wes.
Kimmel's Kimmel's joke about Anderson making a corduroy diorama, I thought was really funny.
Yeah. Speaking of Kimmel, I am not a big fan of Kimmel. I don't think he's that funny. I don't think he even tries to be very funny much anymore. But he had a few good ones tonight. Some of the things he did, like with his guest guy doing the tequila, that was just lame. A few of
Yeah,
them,
I love you and I are just on totally opposite pages. I love Guillermo. I think he's hilarious. But
right, is that an Oscar bit? I guess is what I'm saying. First of all, because I think I'm not rapping on Kimmel's ratings or whatever, but I'm thinking probably 95% of the people who are watching were going, "Who is that guy? Why are we
fair
listening?"
enough. Fair enough.
The naked John Cena, I think that hit.
I thought the
Uh,
Batman bit with Schwarzenegger and DeVito and Michael Keaton was pretty funny.
yeah, they were
Um,
riffing. I think they were just sort of ignoring their teleprompters and just riffing with what they wanted to do. Yeah, some of those hit. Not a whole lot of overt political speechifying during the evening. We had some things about, obviously like Gaza and October 7th. I thought in general they were pretty, like Jonathan Glazer, when he won for Zone of Interest. I thought we made a very profound and tasteful statement. Um, in general, I'm not a fan of big, super sharp political stuff at the Oscars, particularly when it like has nothing to do with your movie and you're just in there.
Kimmel's joke about it being past Trump's jail time, I thought was pretty funny.
That all right, yeah, that was the exception to the rule. That slapped so good. It was funny. It was topical because I think that was a real tweet or Truth Social pro post or whatever you call it. And I mean, it fit. It was the end of the night, and it was sort of like it's like if he'd started off the podcast with that or the show with that, I don't think I would have been like, okay, come on, bud. But as his wind up at the end, I thought that hit really well. So I will give Kimball props on that. Um, Anything else? I mean, Robert Downey gave a nice little speech. Like no one gave like a big, profound Matthew McConaughey type of speech this year. But it
Right.
was just Downey, like me, I know you. Guy's been through the fire, was considered a washout at one time, and now he's king of Hollywood. Good for him.
Kimmel's gotten a little flack for some of the substance abuse jokes he made at Downey's expense on the show, but Downey seemed to think they were funny.
I was gonna say I've seen Downey make the jokes himself. So
Right.
as a general rule, if someone makes fun of themselves about stuff, I think it's okay if you do too, as long as you don't harp on it. Like I said, I
I
mentioned
did think it was a good show. I mean, between I'm Just Ken, the Cena streaking bit, the Schwarzenegger, DeVito, Keaton, Batman bit, it was cool to have the dog from Anatomy of a Fall there. I don't know. Maybe I'm just more into novelty and kitsch than you are. You seem to like to play the affair a little more straight, and I like it a little goofier, perhaps.
yeah, I don't know. I loved it when Billy Crystal hosted. It seemed like there was like a bunch of years there, like in the '90s, where Billy Crystal hosted, and I just thought he was the ace host. Perfect tone between respectful, hey, let's celebrate art in our industry and each other, and also let's have fun and have some jokes. And Kimmel's doing it just because he's the ABC guy and the show's on ABC, and yeah, whatever.
I'm sure you enjoyed his dig at Killers of the Flower Moon about how he could drive to Oklahoma and back during the runtime of the movie.
Yeah, I
No,
put a post on Facebook this morning, probably a little nastier than it needed to be, but I just said no Academy Awards wins for Flowers of the Killer Moon. All is right with the world, and I put a little GIF of Bella Baxter from Poor Things clinking glasses with someone. Yeah, I don't mean to be nasty on Marty. I mean, obviously he's an icon and a legend. I did not care for the Irishman, and I pretty well couldn't stand Killers. But we have our disagreement on that, and I respect your opinion.
sure.
Um, but
And I'm not over the moon about the movie either. I think I gave it 4 stars when it came out. It's too long, but I don't know what I would cut from it. Some of the extraneous stuff is some of my favorite stuff in the movie. So
yeah, let's see. Anything else on the winners or the broadcast that we want to talk about? Godzilla minus one, won best visual effects. I don't know if it had the best visual effects, but everyone was talking about how cheaply they made the movie. So the fact that they got the visual effects they did with their budget was pretty incredible. I personally would have picked Guardians of the Galaxy 3 because all of those creature effects were not just amazing, but they again were central to the story and made it such an empathetic thing that we didn't expect to see. Like,
there are a lot
story.
of strong contenders in that category. I thought the creator kind of had a real vivid and interesting world too, and a very cool look to it. I am happy for the Godzilla folks. As you mentioned before, I think they did an awful lot with an awful little, and I think their stuff played just as well as the others.
Yeah, yeah. 20 Days in Mariupol for best documentary. So happy because it was such the most immediate. And I'm old school. I like documentaries that are like journalism, like let's report on something real. Point our cameras, fly on the wall, and observe, as opposed to things that are very much like here's my point of view, and I want it to be yours too. We didn't have so many of those nominated this year, but it seems to be the trend as lately. Um, uh,
I do
Happy
have a
Zone.
quick question. Oh, sorry.
You good?
You go and then I'll go.
No, I was just going through the rest of the list. I was going to say, happy that Zone of Interest won Best International Feature of Anatomy of a Fall. I did not care for Anatomy of a Fall.
I don't think Anatomy of a Fall was nominated in the category.
Right, and I think that's honestly the only reason it didn't is because for people don't know, the way it works is the country decides
Right.
official Oscar entry, not like there wasn't like a committee that picks between Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall. So that's the way that worked out. I thought Zone of
I only
Interest.
saw two films in that category. I saw The Zone of Interest and Society of the Snow.
Yeah,
Liked them both. Didn't necessarily love either, but I liked them both.
yeah. I ended up doing pretty well. I only did not see two nominees. One was both documentaries. Documentary short, ABC's of Book Burning. Just because that only played in local theaters for 1 week here, and I just missed it. And To Kill a Tiger, which is only just now getting its release, I think, next week
Sure.
on one of the streaming services. I forget. But
You did better than me. I caught most of the major categories. I often don't see all the animated stuff because I don't tend to see a lot of animated movies. I think the only one I saw in that category was the Spider-Man flick, which I dug. But I wasn't terribly surprised that Miyazaki's movie beat it.
yeah, well, let's wrap this up. Final thoughts, Alec, on either the winners, the snubbies, the
I
broadcast.
did what I wanted to ask you a quick question. A friend of mine was talking about this on Facebook. Should we stop having elderly presenters present Best Picture? And how did they organize this? I'm not sure if this was like Pacino not reading the teleprompter, or like generally they recap, or are they just doing the recap through the show? It
I
was
don't.
kind of awkward, and it seemed like I don't know, the air had been let out of the balloon when he announced the winner at the very end of the night.
Yeah, he just kind of. I don't know if he was just didn't want to read from the teleprompter, or they just said, "Hey, come out and just say it." We've seen
And I
obviously.
say this is someone who adores Al Pacino. I'm glad he got the right movie. I'm glad it wasn't like a La La Land Moonlight scenario. But
I hate that so many younger generations like that's what they know of Warren Beatty for because they haven't watched his career, and he really
right.
has been very busy making movies the last 40 years. That's all they know. Oh yeah, Warren Beatty, that's the old guy who messed up the category for Moonrise.
It might have been Faye Dunaway, though. I'm not sure who exactly was responsible for that one. I
Well,
don't really want to point fingers at anybody. It's just, I don't know. Like they used to have Jack Nicholson do it, but it seemed like he would recap them. Like
yeah,
we'd run through all the movies again. It felt more organized. At, at the end last night, it just seemed like, here you go.
yeah, yeah. Well, overall, I mean, I thought it was a decent broadcast. I thought it was a pretty strong year for movies. Like I say, to me, it was almost like a movie. It's almost the movies this year were almost like a basketball team that doesn't have like that superstar, like that
Sure.
obvious great, better than everyone else, but just has a really strong rotation, strong, bench. A lot of great movies. I mean, things like the documentaries and international feature, why often or animated, where you often see like, it's like great nominees across the board.
Yeah. And as we talked about before, there was a ton of great stuff that didn't get nominated at all, like All of Us Strangers, like The Iron Claw. One of my favorites, Air from last year. I think it was deserving and got no love. So these movies are streaming places. You should check them out and make up your own mind.
Yeah, well, that's the spirit. The best thing that comes out of the Oscars is pointing people to movies that maybe they wouldn't have seen otherwise. Well, Alec, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks, Chris. I enjoyed our chat.
All right, and we'll see y'all next year for this once more. Bye bye.
Take care.